This next test is to determine how listeners respond to having their minds exploded. Welcome to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. We got a headline for this week, thanks to Ty. The Flat Earth Society has members around the globe. What do you think about that one? That is an awesome headline.
That's an awesome headline. Oh man!
Somebody didn't
Somebody didn't
think
get the
about
memo,
that one.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Just probably shouldn't have put that up there.
Dude, your PR campaign is screwing us.
So, one thing I want to point out from the last couple of shows, is this thing with aptronyms. Okay, you know, aptronyms are like names that match. Okay, the guy who's in charge of the younger dryas impact hypothesis is named Firestone, and the guy who's in charge of the giant plasma beams from the sun is called Shock. Like, what is actually going on here? How is this? Somebody explain this to me.
Yeah. They're both studying the same cataclysm.
Right. Now we have Firestone for the impact and Shock for the giant lightning bolts. What is going on? And then, Velikovsky was said to be a major thorn in the side of mainstream science, and the guy who's pushing his theory for the electric universe is called Walter Thornhill. Like, what is going on? What is going on? Aptronyms. Yeah. People who have the right names.
That's freaking awesome.
All right. There was one other piece of news that Kyle had that he showed to me that just, it's not really worth reading. But there was there's one couple of sentences, maybe the first paragraph.
It's totally worth reading.
The whole thing?
No.
Yeah, the first paragraph is totally worth reading. Or even just paraphrasing.
Well,
did I put you on the spot? I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
It's not the first paragraph, but
okay.
I sent you a screenshot of somewhere in the middle of the story.
Okay.
But the headline is, "Could humans live on Mars? Absolutely," a NASA expert says. So, blah, blah, blah. They go on all about how amazing Mars is and all of this stuff. And then they finally get down to, here are some obstacles outlined by NASA scientists to living on Mars.
Right.
The first one is, we have to land. And then, each one has like a description.
Yeah.
But the first sentence is in bold. So
we have to land.
Right. If you go down, scroll down a ways, it would say, here's one. We need to wear spacesuits all the time. Weather on Mars is extreme. The difference between Monday and Tuesday could be 170 degrees. The average temperature is well below zero. The air is also largely carbon dioxide. Good for planets, bad for people. So that's the one I see.
What?
It's just like, first of all, you cannot claim that you can live somewhere if the only way you can live there is inside a spacesuit.
That's right.
You are not living there. You're living inside a fucking spacesuit.
That's right. Space, being one of the most inhospitable places for humans that's ever known, requires a spacesuit.
Right.
If you have to wear a spacesuit to live somewhere, it's not a place where you can live.
That's right. You're living inside the spacesuit. Not.
That's right. Can we live in spacesuits? Yes.
And that's all the story needed to say.
Right.
Let's go back to that headline. Could humans live in spacesuits? Absolutely.
That's what it should. That's right. That's what it should say.
And then it could describe where all you can live in a spacesuit.
Right.
And Mars is included.
Right. Could we live in space? Absolutely. As long as we wear spacesuits.
Yeah. So the next thing, of course, in the same, I mean, this paragraph really is just freaking amazing. So the end there, the air is also largely carbon dioxide. Good for planets, bad for people. So
Good.
yeah, like first of all, what does a planet care? How is a gas good for a planet?
Right.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Unless it has something to do with life. In which case, like the planet doesn't care about life.
The planet doesn't give a fuck what's on it.
That's right. So why is carbon dioxide good for planets? I don't know. Whatever. Maybe it was just a throwaway line, but it's like Russ's point. Russ is like, yeah. What about Earth? Earth is not a planet.
Because carbon dioxide is apparently bad for Earth, right? Mm-hmm. You know, it's human generated carbon dioxide that's destroying this planet. So how is carbon dioxide good for planets?
Yeah.
I
mean, we're operating under the whole premise that like carbon dioxide is so bad for the planet.
Exactly. But you know what they really mean when they say planet is the biosphere. That's what when they're like, you know, we're destroying the planet. They mean the biosphere. Like nothing we do is going to just actually destroy Earth.
Yeah.
Crack it in half or explode it or whatever.
Yeah. Unless we steer like another Marduk into it. Like that could be bad for the planet.
It's called planet breaking. It's like cloud breaking, but harder.
Right. Cloud busting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I still would argue. I mean, there's just so much I would argue about this. But why is carbon dioxide bad for people again? I mean, plants breathe it.
Right. If we didn't have it,
we wouldn't have any plants,
which wouldn't be making oxygen, which means we would all die. Or we'd have to live in spacesuits.
Yeah, we could live in spacesuits, that's for sure. And obviously, there are these same types of people with these same types of ideas are, and you know, okay, let's exclude this NASA scientist who gave these quotes.
Yeah.
Because he obviously didn't get the memo about global warming and all that.
Right. I wonder if he gave the bolded quotes and then the reporter is writing their crap beneath what the NASA scientist is like, well, we'd have to land. Then we'd have to blah, blah, blah. The temperature is really blah, blah, blah. We'd need to wear spacesuits.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he was saying all that shit.
I mean, could humans live in space? Absolutely. We just have to like bring a bunch of steel and stuff up there. We'd have to build an entire space station. We'd have to put gas inside the space station. We'd have to pressurize it. And then humans could live inside that space station.
Right. Can we live in space? Yes, in space stations. So no, we can live in space stations, not in space. Right.
I'm pounding the point home. Okay, so I'm just saying that I don't know. This is just whatever. I lost my place. This is ridiculous. Let's move on.
Carbon dioxide is good for planets.
Bad for people.
Right.
Unless it's keeping all the plants alive on the earth.
Right. And thus they're making oxygen.
And then it means it's really good for us. Anyway, that's my freaking current news update. We can absolutely.
I mean, I didn't really have any news, just that headline, which was phenomenal. I don't know what the actual story said. Flat Earth Society has members around the globe.
That's really awesome.
Oh, man. It's just.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
That's right. All right. So. The last show, and by the way, I want to apologize to everyone. I have been slacking off on the show notes. I know that I need to get in there and do the show notes for the last two shows. There's no pictures. There's not even any description.
Oh, man.
I know. I need to do it. And even like a couple of shows back with all the, like, I know that I need to work on the show notes is what I'm saying. And I'm sorry. I just haven't. It's just like we do the show and I'm like, that was fucking great. And then I go to bed. And so I know I need to sit down and work on that. And I will. So that stuff will be up soon. So the last show, we had Brenner here with us.
Thanks to Brenner.
Yeah, Brenner, that was a great show. Some of it was a little confusing because we were all talking at once, but that's because we were excited about giant shock.
Yeah.
And Brenner's pictures of the petroglyphs another thing that you guys can't see because I haven't put them up there. I'm going to put them up there. They're fantastic. Well, the pictures that him and his friends took, and then the pictures of his sketches. So all that stuff will be up there soon. And thanks to Better for that whole thing. And we're going to have him back because that dude is a genius and he has a lot more stuff to say. But this time we were talking about stuff that he didn't know so much about. So he kept saying like, wait, what's Avara? Yeah, sorry, man. Like we should have like kind of explained to him what we're going to talk about beforehand. But, whatever. Like, he's got all kinds of stuff that we want to talk to him about that he's an expert in that we're not. That's what we needed to do last time, and we didn't do it so much. But it was cool. It was a good show.
Yeah, that shock interview just, shocked us all. And
that's right.
We had to talk about that.
He probably has, like, a shock quartz necklace. That was cool.
Shock quartz. Yeah.
Shock quartz necklace. Yeah. All right, So we talked about Dolmens very briefly at the end of the last show. And
freaking Johnson was the one listening to the interview in the shop. I walked by and I was like, I hear this guy going, yeah, the Sphinx enclosure. And I was like, is that Robert Schock? And he's like, yeah. How did you know that? And I was like, I recognize his voice.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I got to listen to this thing. So the next day.
Yeah, so so at the end of that show, we talked about Dolmens, and I have a big article that kind of just goes into that stuff. So I want to get onto that in the next segment, I think. But for now, like, there's a couple of things from the last show and the one before that I'd like to sort of dig down into a little bit more with Kyle. So this is what I was thinking. You remember how we talked about in the Great Pyramid, and there's another place called Nerut Dagi that's in Turkey. Okay, it's but anyway, there's these places all over the world that are they're very ancient and anomalous. Like in the Great Pyramid, for example, the subterranean chamber has a tunnel that just kind of goes off into the rock for 100 feet or so, and then just dead ends.
Yeah,
and this like smooth, it looks like they didn't finish it.
Right.
Well, if you had something that could turn rock into clay, you could reseal your tunnels and make them look like they were never cut.
Did we talk about that on the show or not during the show? Because we talked about this.
I think we talked about it during the show.
Okay, so yeah. Yep. There's dead-end tunnels.
Right.
It's like, okay, so one of the problems with everything that we found inside the Great Pyramid is that there seems to be a bunch of things missing.
Yes.
From inside chambers that could not have been opened
because the pyramid wasn't opened.
Because it wasn't opened.
But if there was another way to get in.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, but I mean, it's like there's even that shaft that looks like it was hand dug or whatever. Just kind of like
shaft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like a little loop in it, and then it just goes dead in somewhere. And you're just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
But I mean, like, even with that, it's like, were they really taking out all of the stuff through that thing? What is that thing?
Right.
That thing doesn't make any sense.
It was definitely cut through the body of the pyramid after it was done.
Right.
Because it actually carves through
stones.
Through the stones. Yeah. It's actually cut through the stones. Whereas, like, for instance,
like if there's anything that should be called a relieving chamber, it might be that whole little tunnel system.
Yeah. Like they were like, we need to let some gas out of this thing or something like that. And they cut.
Yeah.
But like, so like, for instance, the air shaft, the quote unquote air/star shafts are not cut through the stone. Mm-hmm. They are built into the structure. Right.
Yeah.
And all the other tunnels and chambers are built into, well, okay, except for the bottom part of the descending chamber and then the subterranean, because they're actually cut into the ground
into
below.
the bedrock. Yeah.
Right. And by the way, and we've mentioned this before, the whole thing is built on what they call a primordial mound. There's actually a hill underneath the whole pyramid that they didn't flatten, even though they flattened the entire rest of the plateau.
Yeah, that's just...
that doesn't make any fucking sense, right? Like, talking about building stuff, the first thing you do is flatten the ground because otherwise it's really hard. But they didn't. They left this mound that can be seen with, with seismic surveys and shit like that.
Everyone said it was daft to build a pyramid on a hill, but I built it all the same. It's fucking brilliant.
That's right. So, thinking about varas and hypogeums and stuff like that, like that sealed tunnel in the subterranean chamber and then the like what they call the descending passage. Like if you think about it, to remove the entire pyramid, just to take the whole pyramid off there, like you have this sort of mound, right? And then there's this tunnel cut down into it that has an initial chamber, and then there's a long tunnel going off that dead ends. Well, what if that didn't dead end, and it actually goes into this enormous, which all the legends say exists, this humongous warren, this like giant set of tunnels and this maze, this three-dimensional maze beneath the Giza Plateau, right? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that guy, there's the old man in the series, the pyramid, what is it called? Pyramid Code?
Yeah, the Pyramid Code. Yeah.
The old man he's an Egyptian guy.
Yeah.
He's saying, he's like sitting on a rock or something at some part of the show, and he's like, there are tunnels all under here, everywhere.
That's right, because Giza was his backyard.
And he's
right?
like, and as a kid, he used to run around in them there. Most of them have been caved in and closed up. But he's like,
that's right.
There was this whole labyrinth of tunnels under there. He used to run around in when he was a kid.
That's right. So why are they denied by mainstream?
I don't know.
Here's the other thing. So in the Robert Schoch interview, he says, first of all, I thought this was really interesting. He's like, just like with what he was saying about all the data that he has for the solar flare thing, he says that he was like, I would not have said anything. I would not have gone to bat for this theory about this, specifically speaking of the age of the Sphinx. He was like, I would not have, I wouldn't have done this debate unless I had a lot more data than just the initial impression that I got from the erosion, right? So, yeah, the Sphinx enclosure has definite erosional features that are from precipitation and from heavy precipitation, And I was thinking about this when he was saying this, and I'm like thinking, and he actually said this was really cool. He was like, well, initially I was thinking thousands of years of rain, but if it was cataclysmic torrential rainfalls, it wouldn't have to be that long.
Yeah.
It could be just a short, like geologically speaking, short period of really torrential rainfall. And I'm like thinking like, raindrops like bowls, man, like bowls.
Mud bowls.
Yeah. And that could cut, those erosional features within decades. So he says that, but he also talked about how he has all this other data, and a lot of it was seismic, but he did a bunch of other stuff that pointed to the idea that the Sphinx was very much older. And now it was also interesting because he said his most, like when he first was talking about this, he said, my conservative estimate was between 6,000 and 7,000, maybe 9,000, right? But now he's talking about it's much older than that. Like he was saying, like now he's not going with what he called the conservative estimate. He was saying that it's definitely older than 9700 BC because that's when the cataclysm that caused the rainfall took place, right? And he was saying that it may even go back into the actual construction of the thing may actually go back into the greater ice age.
Previous to
the Younger Dryas, which is another 1,000 years.
Oh, damn.
Right? Yeah.
I need to listen to that interview again.
Yeah.
Because
it definitely, there was a lot of stuff in there. And he was funny too about how he kept saying like, we're just speculating here. I'm not actually saying this, but just, and Joe Rogan's like, yeah.
But he was like very careful not to.
Yeah. And he kept saying like, he asked Joe, he's like, have you been to Egypt? And Joe's like, no, I haven't.
Yeah.
He's like, you need to come to Egypt with us. And Joe's like,
"Nah,
I'm scared. I don't want to. Right. And even at the very end of the show, after Schoch was gone, Joe Rogan's like, and I definitely need to go to Egypt with that guy, but not yet because I'm still scared. Still scared. But anyway, and that dude, what about his story about having 4 AK-47s touching his chest, where they were like, "You're carrying plastic explosives," and it was actually the clay that they used to put broken fossils into. He's like, that took some explaining because it looks like blocks of plastic explosives. And he's like, no, I swear I'm not carrying. They're like, what are these? Yeah. I know those look like explosives. Totally not. Yeah. So also, dude, another thing that he said that just absolutely blew my mind was about Göbekli Tepe. He said that all the other okay, so the hill that is called Göbekli Tepe has been geoscanned, with all these various types of scanning, and they've found that they've dug up less than whatever they said, like less than 1% or something like that. I don't know. They said there are hundreds of rings still in the hill. He said that all the hills around that area show, like you can see
same characteristics.
Well, that you can see the tops of the T-pillars sticking out. Dude, all the other hills.
Yeah.
So we're talking about
like that's a massive
if Klaus Schmidt
I thought that's what Graham Hancock was saying too, like in one of his interviews, because they went and explored them, and he was like, you can see the tops of them sticking out of these other hills.
Right. But I didn't know that. I mean, what Shock was saying was like that all the hills around there have the same sort of profile, and that like there's chunks and artifacts everywhere. And I also thought it was interesting that, okay, so he says that like, he's like, they won't tell you this, but if you ask an archaeologist when they're kind of not being serious or whatever, when Joe's like, when you got him drunk, and he's like, yeah. He's like, yeah. They'll say, if you tell them like, what would you say about this work? If you just saw this without if you didn't know where it came from, what would you say? And they were saying that it was no older than 1000 BC, which is not anywhere near 10,000 BC or 12,000 BC.
Which implies that they have the whole story wrong.
And I remember, yes, exactly. And I remember in Graham Hancock's book that he said that he was pointing out that archaeologists knew about this in the 50s, but they discarded it as an interesting archaeological site because they thought it was an old Muslim graveyard from from 1500 AD.
Yeah.
Like that. They were like, oh, we don't need to, those are just headstones or whatever from some old, Islamic graveyard or whatever from 1500 AD. So that was actually their initial assessment.
It's crazy to me to imagine you're walking around and there's this carved top of a pillar sticking out of the ground in the middle of the desert, and you wouldn't dig it up because you think you know what it is.
How could you? You're like, oh, yeah, I know what that is.
That's insane to me. Like how much other shit is around that archaeologists are like, nah, we know what that is.
Yeah. Like Gunung Padang, they wouldn't dig on that because they were like, we know what that is.
Man, this is like, sorry for anybody that knows any archaeologists, because we know that archaeologists don't listen to this show, so fuck them. But that is the worst, like most terrible, problematic scientific study. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Practice.
Yes. And okay. And
it's it's so fucked.
Yeah. And to give them not credit, but a little bit of understanding.
No.
No. We had to overcome the same thing because there's this impetus to be like, well, somebody already knows that, so I don't need to look into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm being judgy right now.
Judgy. I didn't know you could verb that word.
I'm being real judgy. Yeah. Nah, I used to not look into shit because I thought I knew what the deal was.
Or you thought somebody else did.
I probably still do in a lot of different ways that I don't even recognize. But whenever I figure out that I'm doing that, I will kick my own ass. Because fuck that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, we both had to overcome this sort of like, there's no need because either it's already known or it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's something that people just have to overcome. And it's really built into Western civilization, that concept that like somebody that couldn't be right because somebody would have already done that or somebody would have already tried it. Your hydrogen car can't possibly work because people would know if it did. Because
the evil oil companies already would have bought out and murdered the people who invented them. So that's right. You don't have to worry about it.
That's right.
It won't work. Or you'll die.
Since you haven't been murdered, we know your car doesn't work.
That's right.
So I found that whole thing fascinating. Like, and Shock just dropped lightning bolts one after the other during that whole show. Like, it was fantastic. So I really recommend you guys go check that one out. You don't have to watch the video. I didn't, but it's probably helpful because the video has all the pictures that they're looking at.
Pictures.
Yeah. The vases, the vases. We didn't study the contents of the vases. Or wait, we didn't study the vases themselves, just the contents. Yeah. That's what that reminded me of. But, okay, so I wanted to bring that up. I wanted to bring up that stuff. And I don't know if we ever talked about this place called Nerut Dagi. I think that's the name. Nerut Dagi. It means like Hill of the King or something like that. It's in Turkey. So this is another place in Turkey that's weird, right? So we already have all this anomalous, these varas in Turkey. Well, up on this mountain, there are these heads. You've seen them?
Wait, the varas are in Turkey too?
Yeah, the varas are in Cappadocia in Turkey, in Anatolia. Those are the names of the provinces in Turkey. That
I thought they were in Iran. Like
There probably are some in Iran, but Iran is the old site of the Sumerians.
I thought that's where the like Zoroastrianism or whatever, all the
there's lots of carvings of Zoroaster, of Ahura Mazda in Iran.
I thought that whole thing originated in Iran, but
Persia.
the actual
the
varas
they're in QU is in Turkey and all those,
that are associated with the Zendavesta.
Yeah. The Vendadad in the Zendavesta. Is that weird?
No,
like,
it makes more sense because
I'm like watching you like, what are you thinking? Like, what is that?
Well, because
it looks like you're
I'm thinking about like, okay, Göbekli Tepe is like a day's hike from Ararat.
Yeah, that's right. And from
Ararat is where the Ark ended up supposedly being.
Yeah,
right.
And it's like a 30-minute taxi ride from what is it called? Something. There's a city there named that he says that like anytime they're digging a cellar, they find shit that's 12,000 years old.
Yeah. So there's like I'm just making the connection to the like.
Oh, okay.
Surviving the cataclysm thing.
Right.
So you've got Göbekli Tepe, which is dated it to that period, and it was like intentionally buried, and it's got all that shit. Then you have Ararat, which is right just down the road.
Yeah.
Which is where the Noah's Ark was supposed to be landed.
Right.
Quote unquote. And now the Varas are also there, which they appear to be another type of ark that was told to be dug by God to save everything from.
That's right.
So it's just like all that's happening in this one area.
Same area. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so another thing I wanted to say, those weird cone shaped things that Brett was showing, and I got to put these in the show notes, but like he says that those are mud huts. He's like, those were constructed things. That's why they looked weird to us in terms of erosion. He was like, those are all constructed and people were building like, so these are post Vara period or whatever, right? He said that those are all constructed things. And like, he's like, you can tell that they were like, this is like shortly after Göbekli Tepe. He's like, people are building these conical mud huts and kind of digging through them. And they're really, the construction level has gone, or the skill level has gone way, 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 way down from Göbekli Tepe and the ability to put up the pillars. He was talking about how they socketed them in. Like, I know we talked about this in Peru where they freaking dig down and socket them into the bedrock. Yeah. Right.
And they glued them in there with some kind of
glue that we don't even know about anymore. Yeah.
Just glue that 12-foot pillar, 14-foot pillar of limestone down.
I like when you hold this while I bury it.
That's right. Hold all of them while we bury them. Because, like, you can't bury one enough.
Because the other ones are too close.
Right.
Kind of. All right, you guys come hold these while I bury them. But yeah, so he was pointing out that the use of mortar / concrete, whatever it was that they were using, and it was to sort of glue them down. He's like, that is revolutionary, right? In terms of archaeology, like the use of concrete at 12,000 to 10,000 BC is, I mean, the first concrete is supposed to be the Romans and the Greeks, they knew that the Egyptians had plaster, but that's not the same thing as concrete. So I don't know, that whole, like all of those things, those little tidbits I wanted to get in, like that's one of the things we like to do in this show. Really dig down and find all the pieces of the mystery that are kind of skipped over by all the articles.
Maybe those mud huts, once they build all the mud huts And then they go use the Shamir to turn them all to stone.
Yeah, to turn it, switch it over to the other side, right?
Yeah, right.
I also thought that they may have been the part of where they were dropping the stuff from the Shamir, and later people were like, "Well, this is kind of easy to dig into," you know what I mean? But yeah, that's a good point.
But it's like, they could build shit and then just turn it into solid stone,
right?
You know?
Yeah.
But okay, back to your thing real quick before we take this break. If you had this tool that could turn the stone into
clay,
like clay, basically, or something like clay,
right?
And this is where you're sealing off the tunnels or entrances to places, and it just looks like stone. And so you have a tunnel that goes somewhere, and it just kind of looks like it ends.
Yeah.
There is a test that they do for geopolymers, and it basically like they take a piece of it and look at I guess they use a microscope or something to see if the fossils are like whole or what their sort of arrangement is.
Yeah.
And they can tell whether or not it's natural sedimentary, like laying down of these fossils versus some thing crushing them into fine powder and then mixing them into an aggregate.
Yeah.
Or
so I would say that maybe,
geopolymer out of it is what I meant.
Yeah. So I was thinking, okay, when you just said that, I was thinking like, I wonder if that test would not work on this because they're assuming that to make a geopolymer, you have to like
crush the stone. Yeah. If this thing just like
turns it into
then
clay,
all the fossils stay the same.
Right. I mean, there wouldn't be like this perfect layering, which maybe they could look for.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. You could do a test, but nobody will because you know what? They know that that's just the end of the tunnel that they stopped cutting.
All right. Yeah. Go to the back of that tunnel and just scrape off a little bit, and then go fucking test it, dude.
Right, and then get internationally reviled like those Germans that scraped off a little bit of the. Remember that?
Yeah.
Do you remember that whole scandal?
Yeah, they scraped off the paint or whatever, the red paint.
They took a little sample of the and like Zahi Hawass like flipped a wig.
Yeah,
on
that
them,
was
dude.
the paint that was inside the relieving chambers, right? They tested that.
The one that's supposedly
found out
the cartouche proof.
Yeah,
yeah.
And
they were like, well, let's go just. And they were going to go get it tested because it's made out of organic stuff. They know how the paint was. Yeah, so they were going to go get it tested, and like freaking Zahi Hawass flipped out and said the whole thing was a giant Jewish conspiracy, and like.
But they did get it tested, and it turned out to be
500
like,
years old.
Yeah.
Or less. Yeah. And Zahi Hawass was saying they're trying to prove that it was 20,000 years old and it was built by aliens or whatever. Yeah, that you could tell he was trying to get out in front of that story.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna take a break.
They stole the cartouche. That's what he said. They stole it. Yep. Sorry. We're gonna take a break and then we'll come back and we'll talk about dolmens and snakes.
Giant rocks on other rocks. Too. We should talk about those.
Oh yeah. What is that?
Dolmens? And snakes. You are 33 minutes and 33 seconds into the 52nd episode of Brothers of the Serpent podcast. 52! That's right. Sacred number 52.
That's right.
Add them together. What do you get?
108.
7.
Wait.
5 and 2.
Yeah, that's right. Shit. And I was wrong the other way too. It's 104. Yeah. Helm to 108.
I don't know what you're talking about, 108. How'd you get that one?
What? 108?
Yeah.
108 is like 72 plus half of 72, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's 72 plus 36, right? It's 108. Is that? I'm terrible at arithmetic. Like this, I have proved this. I've proved this throughout this entire show. Like I've gone back and listened to the show, and I'm like, God, I fuck up math all the time on this show.
That's awesome.
Britter's like, yeah, so that was like 6 years ago. I'm like, no, it was in 2012. He's like, yeah, so it was 2018. I'm like, oh yeah. God dang it.
Yeah, so we're really excited about 52.
Yeah. I mean, when we first started, we were excited we got to 10.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, dude, 52 shows. This is...
We've got like 10. Yeah.
All right. So
what's significant about 52? 52 weeks?
52 weeks in the year. Yeah. And there is a way to get to it with precession. I just can't remember exactly how it is.
Yeah, we'll have to do some more research on that on the break. We just realized it right when we were coming back in, like, oh yeah, it's 52.
Oh yeah, this is episode 52. We got to make a big deal out of this.
The next big deal is 72.
That's right. And that's going to be a really big deal.
Yeah. 20 more episodes.
That's right. 20 more episodes and we'll have done one arc minute of shows or whatever. 1 degree of arc or something like that.
If you convert our shows into years.
So if we do 25,980 shows, we'll have done one processional year of shows. Is that right? Am I getting that number wrong too? 25,000?
Yeah, 25,920.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Damn it. Yeah, I can't do this. 4,320. I can do that one.
Okay, yeah.
That's 2 processional ages of shows. All right. So.
But you got to have these. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
So you got to have these numbers marked on your forehead.
What?
Yeah. That's some hardcore esoteric shit right there.
That is true. If you had a giant 108 on your forehead, you would be hardcore.
Yeah. So Randall Carlson translated the mark of the beast idea.
Oh yeah.
That's in Revelations, I guess. And he was saying that the number is the number of man.
Yeah.
It's actually been translated in different ways, but
yeah.
And he will have it on his forehead or on the back of his hand or something.
Right.
And what he's saying is that symbolism is that when you have these numbers at the forefront of your mind, and then you're looking at the universe, you will understand what is going on.
Oh, that's why it says it's the number of the earth and the number of man. Is that right?
I'm not sure, but
okay.
We should check that out. But the point is that like that's why I was saying you should put this number on your forehead because like the more we look into astronomy and start to see the numbers associated with the motions of the earth and how they apply to geometry, earth measure,
right,
and the measuring stick, the measuring rod, which is man, in the imperial system, those numbers begin to stand out, and you start seeing them repeated over and over. And when you notice them, that is like having the numbers marked on your forehead. It's like
it's like having it at the forefront of your mind. Right. Is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. That was Randall Carlson's.
I mean, if they were on my forehead, I totally wouldn't see them, and I would.
No, at the forefront was what
right.
it means. Like,
yeah.
On your forehead, you don't see
it. It would be everyone else that would be thinking about them all the time because they're on my forehead.
Yeah. You'd be playing the Inglourious Bastards game.
Right.
It's like, what number is it? Am I a processional number? Yes. Okay. 108. No. Dang it.
That's right. Damn it. And I say the 108, the reason I always say Helm to 108 is just another reason why Fifth Element is a badass movie. Because if you watch that movie, you'll notice at the very beginning when they're facing the dark thing, that the evil, they're out in the ship, right? And they're facing this, like, whatever they call it, the Mr. Evil, the big planet. That's the dark, that's the evil thing that they got to destroy.
Yeah.
They have to turn to 108 to see it. Helm to 108. You know, and the helmsman's like, Helm to 108. And they turn it over, and I'm just like, see? Somebody who wrote this thing knew what they were freaking doing. All right. So dolmens. Like, we've gone over all kinds of ancient constructions. I think dolmens are overlooked a lot by people who look into... I mean, because, you know, they're like Peru is just amazing, and like Angkor Wat and just all these other places. But these dolmens are everywhere. So listen to this. Basically, let me read some of this from this article. This guy has basically spent a lot of time studying them. So he says ancient peoples from Britain to India constructed marvelous structures of huge slabs, which are called dolmens. Dolmens belong to a group of ancient megaliths, which translation from the Greek, the word megalith means huge stone. And they represent man-made structures of a certain shape assembled of massive stone slabs or blocks. These mystic structures, the estimated age of which is between 2 to 7 to 8,000 years old, sometimes even the age of 10,000 years old is mentioned, are spread all over the world in different countries and cultures. Some researchers believe the first dolmens were built on the Iberian Peninsula circa 4,000 to 3,500 BC. Others assert the earliest dolmen locations are the Baleares, Sardinia, and Corsica. As of today, not less than 90,000 dolmens are numbered in the world.
Wow.
So, I mean, 90,000. So whoever was, this is a global effort, right?
Yeah.
And probably there's more than that. We just haven't found them. These structures are found in Bulgaria and Turkey on the Mediterranean coast, Corsica and Malta Islands, in Spain and Portugal. Many dolmens have been discovered in the territory of present-day England and France, and even on the Polynesian Islands. Such structures have also been found in North Africa, in India, Palestine, and North Korea. Over 50% of all dolmens found in the world are located on the Korean peninsula. Most of them are in Geochang, Hwasun, I'm probably butchering these names, and, wow, I don't even want to try that one. Gangwadal Island. Gangwadal Island. Before the war of 1950 to 1953, there were about 80,000 dolmens just there. Not less than 30,000 have been preserved until today, but this surely does not prove that exactly Korea is the motherland of dolmens. There is a big accumulation of dolmens along the Black Sea coast, especially the Caucasus region, where dolmens are scattered along 400 kilometers of the coastline, from Anapa to Novorossiysk and Abkhazia. The width of this line towards Novorossiysk is 75 kilometers, and as of today, archaeologists have discovered about 3,000 dolmens here. It is considered that the earliest dolmens were built here in the early 2nd millennium BC, which, I think they're about 2,000 years old. Dolmens represent compositions of huge flat stone slabs, 4 of which are set vertically and covered with the 5th slab on the top. The weight of such cover may reach tens of tons, and it may be up to 10 meters in length and width. The further from the sea, the smaller such structures are. In the front slab, Yes. In the front slab, there's a small oval or round aperture. The stone slabs of which dolmens are composed are almost untreated on the outside, while on the inside they are flattened and nearly polished. Dolmens are found in many countries of the world, mostly at watersheds in karstic regions on slopes. Karstic means full of caves. Okay. We live in a karstic region.
Yeah.
Limestone, on slopes near rivers and mountainous and wooded areas. More and more previously unknown dolmens are being discovered nowadays in many places across the planet. And he's got a map here that shows. Okay, dolmen chambers are usually trapezoid or rectangular, sometimes round. Such structures may be assembled of separate blocks or wholly hewed out of a huge stone. So they might be just completely rock cut out of a single gigantic block. Some of them have ornaments carved on them and relief images on front slabs. The shapes of dolmens turns them into acoustic devices. Reflected from stone walls, sound vibrations get superimposed upon each other, resound and swell. And we will speak of this a little later. In Western Europe, dolmens are assembled of untreated stones. In Russia, such blocks are polished and thoroughly adjusted to one another. It is difficult to erect such a grandiose structure even by means of modern technologies. Another example of megalithic architecture is the so-called trilithons or triliths. Okay, so then he goes to let's see. Let me skip ahead over here. North Africa, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so he's got some pictures. Like, see these? This is Russia.
Oh, yeah.
South Korea. So I was saying, because Brenner was asking, are they always like that with the hole? And I was like, no, sometimes they're just like a couple of, and it's just giant slabs stuck on top.
Yeah.
Right? So, and some of them have big openings. And look at that one, like a mushroom.
Well, if you go with Egyptological logic, they are probably the easiest things to build. And that's why they're everywhere.
That's right. This is the easiest way to build a thing.
Yeah.
I need to go to Turkey to build a thing.
Yeah.
A megalith accumulation or dolmen site is located in the Kzinka River Valley in Russia. There are over 500 dolmens there, but unfortunately most of them are ruined or overgrown with greenery. What?
I'm going to dolmen school to learn how to build a thing.
There are numerous dolmens on the seacoast as well. The most famous and easily accessible are dolmens in the valley of Pashada and Zane rivers on Mountain Nexus in the suburbs of Tuapse and Asha, and in the Mamed Canyon, which is a monolith. Okay, so free access to the dolmens is available. Okay. It is unknown who exactly discovered the dolmens in Russia. Initial dolmen descriptions were given by representatives of various countries. In 1794, a German zoologist and botanist, Peter Simon Pallas, visited the Taman Peninsula and described the stone houses found there, quote-unquote stone houses. In 1818, the Frenchman E. Thibaut de Marigny? I can't. Shit. A sailor in the Russian service made a written record of a group of 6 dolmens on the Pshata River during the Caucasian War in 1839. In 1839, an English intelligence officer, James Bell, who lived among the Shapsugs, drew picturesque sketches of mountaineers in front of dolmens. Here's a bunch of other pictures. See how they're very similar in terms of... So a lot of times these little holes, you can't get... They're not a good entrance. You can't crawl. They're not as small as the air shafts, whatever, but maybe a child could get through there, right? And sometimes sometimes they're bigger, like that one, right?
Yeah.
And they have found skeletons on the insides of the dolmen, and there's like a little
or something
jar next to them. Like they went in there and drank poison and died on purpose for some reason. So various peoples have lots of different definitions and meanings. Since we've undertaken to collect more information about dolmens, let me refer to what I have found. The word dolmen originates from a combination of 2 Breton words, tol, or dole, meaning a table, and min, meaning a stone, which in literal translation means a stone table.
Okay.
Shades of Narnia. Furthermore, there are other interpretations. Yeah, unexpected Narnia. There are other interpretations of the word dolmen, e.g. changing the destiny.
Huh.
The, quote, all-knowing Wikipedia, unquote, gives the following dolmen definitions used by various peoples. The Abkhazians, which is their word is saun, the house of the soul, the human soul, or adharma, funeral houses. Okay. Adages, let's see, houses for the living in the other world. Kabardians, ipsu une, which is isp house, but he doesn't really translate that. Mingrelians, let's see, houses of giants, receptacle of bones. The Cossacks, heroes' houses or devil's houses. Dolmens are usually called anta in Portugal and riose in Scandinavia. These words are parts of local dolmen names. There are also the following versions. The Adyghes call the Caucasian dolmens serpuns, which means houses of dwarves. The Ossetians have a legend about a people of dwarfs, Bycentia, who are endowed with supernatural features. For instance, a Bycinta dwarf is able to knock down a big tree with his gaze only. Legend says the dwarfs live in the sea. The Ossetians assert that mythic Narts, the ancestors of Caucasian peoples, also came out of the sea and gave culture to people.
Viracocha.
Yeah. So the word dolmen appears in Russian archaeology after the 1840s. Okay, so let me skip here first. Let's see. As for the stone table, or tolmen, the story is even more tangled and senseless. According to the British and French Wikipedia, etymologists cast doubt on such a hypothesis. In Celtic, tolmen means a stone circle, not a stone table. Although the two notions are close for the Celts. There is no tolmen in English and French, therefore the Celtic language is mentioned. Also the word meanings, or about the word meanings. Dolmen, long, changing, and mindful. Dolmen, changing the destiny, and tolmen, a circle of men, a point of gathering of people who change the world. A stone circle. The word designates that what bears its sonic image and does not depend on the date of its creation. All other local dolmen names are less ancient, in my opinion, and such stone structures were never called so in the primary sources. Okay, so he goes through an example of what local names are for them. We can see that many who called dolmens in such a way had no idea what they actually represented. Houses of dwarves or giants, tables. In a similar manner, we could define pyramid as a heap of stones and say that it's an ancient name. In Google Translate, there are pronunciations of words in any language. Listen to the word pyramid. In all languages, it sounds quite the same, though being written differently. Words sound identically in all languages only if they were created in the general information space of the Earth. For instance, there is a Russian word Sputnik, which means satellite, created in the 20th century and meaning co-traveler, traveling along. The sound image of this word designates its essence, and it sounds similarly all over the world. Thus, the word pyramid was created in the general information space of the Earth, which existed before Christ. The word sounded the same way before the flood and when the pyramids were constructed, so on and so forth. Okay. Perhaps.
What is he saying? Like that pyramid, the word itself, because it sounds the same in all the different languages,
that everybody has adopted it, and so it's in the general information space. Like nobody has their own word for pyramid.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
That's like Z.
Right. Perhaps the word dolmen, just like pyramid, came to us from the previous civilization, is what he's saying. There isn't another word like, he's suggesting that these words are very, very, very ancient.
Yeah, okay, so I said Z, but I meant X. Like when
X,
we talked about the letter X.
The other.
Yeah, and where it's like you can see the path of how it was adopted and adopted and adopted by all these different languages.
Right.
And it's the same everywhere. Like
I would say that some lesser examples of it would be tsunami. Like a lot of people use, like we have tidal wave, but that's not a single word. Tsunami means this gigantic inundation of the sea, right? And like it's been kind of propagated around because no one, I guess coastal peoples probably have their own local words for them, right? But tsunami has become the sort of global vernacular for this word, for this event. You know what I mean? Tornado is another one. Like I would think of, maybe it's not global, but we use the word tornado. It's a Spanish word, right? That means the twister. So
yeah, that's weird. Tsunami, because the Australians call it a balawaiva or something like that.
A billabong.
I'm just kidding. They have their own local word for it.
Yeah, but that would be the Aborigines, not the actual, right? The Aborigines have their word for it, and the Australians are trying to say it, and they're butchering it. It's a balawaiva! Tsunami, that's an odd name. Okay. But I find it really interesting, like the whole dolmen meaning, or tolmen meaning like a place where people who change the world meet.
Yeah, that's cool.
Dude.
And that's like Stone Circle, kind of like the way he arranged that whole paragraph, like made me think of the place where people meet. They meet in a circle around it.
Round table type of.
Yes.
And round table is mixed up in there. Yeah.
The round table, stone table.
Right.
It's not necessarily round. It's just where we gather in a circle and talk.
So here's a
and change the world.
Here's a sketch of some of the glyphs that are found on the inside. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, giant serpent,
right,
with wings, and a turtle.
So what are they trying to say? That's a crab, right?
Yeah,
he's going hey, or it's a spider. I don't know what that is, but it's like those are waves.
Yeah,
and then they're trying to show, I don't know, waveforms from the side, Yeah.
I
have no idea. But it's really interesting how they've got those.
So we have these like what they call the glacial erratics here.
Yeah.
Like in the United States, and they're like these huge boulders, but there's like four little
tiny
stones underneath it.
Yeah.
Are those also considered dolmens?
Yeah. So not here. They're called glacial erratics.
Yeah, I know,
but if those same exact things were in England, they would be called dolmens or
And the
long
idea
barrows.
is that, like, the idea that they have is that they were sitting on the ice and the ice was melting around them. And so underneath them, there was like a pillar of ice still holding it. And so people came and put the little stones underneath it.
That's shit. I've never heard that explanation, but that's totally possible. No,
I think what I was thinking.
I think glacial erratics are. This is why the explanation of glacial erratics is so ridiculous when it's a big stone standing on like little bitty ones, because the idea is that these were just trapped in the ice, and as the ice melted, it just dropped them.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I was thinking.
How do you end up with giant ones all over the place balanced on little bitty ones if that's what was really happening?
Yeah.
Now a glacial erratic is just an enormous boulder that's not from the area, that's just like sitting on the ground. That could be a glacial erratic, especially if they're really rounded.
But how, like, I don't understand how, like, a boulder that massive can sit on top of that ice without just melting it.
Oh, because of the
pressure.
Of the
pressure underneath. It's like, how?
Well, I don't know. That's a really good question too. I've never even thought of that.
I remember you telling me about that thing that our neighbor got to make the ball of ice for for mixing drinks.
Just from the heaviness.
Like, you take the thing and you just like crush it, and it just like it makes this ball of.
And I did it multiple times, and I was like, I don't believe that this is what's really happening. Like, I couldn't believe that just the weight was melting it, like, because it was boiling, dude. Like, the water was actually going. And I was like, no. It's like, no. What? and then I'd make
How
another
did it
one.
work? Like you just take some ice, like ice cubes, or you have one big ice cube?
Yeah,
or?
like one they would freeze a giant thing, and then you would kind of like it would be in like a square container. You run some hot water over it to pull the piece of ice out of there. So it'd be a big cube of ice.
Okay.
Then you set it down on a thing that has a hemisphere in it, and then there's 4 rods coming out of that, and then there's another thing that has the other hemisphere, and you just like put the other one. It's got holes in it to go with the rods.
Yeah.
And you just set it down on top of the cube of ice.
It's
and
pretty
it just,
heavy, like the thing.
Yeah, it's real heavy. It's real heavy, and it's made of carbon. It turns ice cold as soon as you put it on there, and then it starts going, and it's fast, and the water's like sizzling and shit. It's like, and then you like pull it off there, and it's a perfect sphere. And it was so quick, I was like, I don't believe this. Like, I don't fucking believe whatever just happened. Like, whatever that. No,
And you did it multiple times.
yeah, I'm like, let me try this again. No, this is not happening. No, I couldn't believe that it was just the weight. And like, I was like, is it plugged in? Is there a heater? Like, what the fuck? And she's like, no, you just set this down on. And I looked around. There's no cords or anything. But it was like the sizzling. And I'm like, no. You've got a microwave somewhere and you're beating it. I don't know. This is bullshit.
So that's what I was thinking. Like, I'm trying to imagine this boulder. Like they're talking about these glacial erratics being carried on the ice, and I'm just like, how come it's not just going?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Like they're fucking huge, you know?
Yeah, that is a really good question. Well, okay, so the ice itself in those cases
Might have already been extremely.
what's
dense.
it called? It's called
I mean,
paleo ice, right? So I know, and I don't know the properties of it, but I know that paleo glacial ice, which is what they call it when the ice has been compacted beneath itself, it becomes incredibly like dense.
like the crystal lattices are like all lined up perfectly.
Yes, and it
just,
actually
like, no
becomes
pockets, and
it becomes beautiful blue and translucent because the crystals are so enormous, right? Like
Yeah.
So it's like maybe that's why it can't, because if the glacial ice is I mean, how does
full
it
of
hold
little
its,
air pockets and all that.
how is 2 miles of ice holding up its own weight, right?
Yeah, I know.
So like the bottom of it must be just craziness, like we don't even know. And that may be why it makes horrendous noises. Like the natives said, like if you were near the frozen lands, that the sounds of the demons of the frozen lands was like deafening because the ice is like shrieking and cracking. And I mean, okay, I lived in Vermont and Wyoming for a year each. So I was there for both places where the ice that is formed over the winter begins to crack, like when it's on water.
Yeah.
Dude, it's not, I can't even describe it. It sounds like the world is ending in some cases if you're close enough to it, because it's just like boom, and there'll be these enormous explosions at the end of some of it, right? And it'll echo all throughout the mountains. And you're like, oh my God, we're all gonna die, you know. So I can't even imagine what 2 miles of ice would just sound like,
Yeah.
you know. Especially because it's moving too, and it's
Yeah.
grinding all this shit. And it must, you know, like the natives said that it sounded like the shrieking of hell and the demons at the frozen lands. That's why they called it dragons. And
Yeah.
you know, it's like I don't know, it's just terrifying. So and this is a long way away from your question of how
But that's what I'm
did
trying
the ice hold the boulder.
Yeah, I was trying to get to this idea of like, okay, you got this huge boulder and the ice is melting, but you would imagine that in a condition where, let's say, the ice is slowly melting and there's some ground exposed, that the ice underneath a stone would not melt as fast as the ice exposed around it.
Okay.
Right? Because the stone would be sort of insulating
Protecting
it from
it
the
from the
sun,
sun.
all that. So you would end up having like more melting. And there could be some cases where if the ice was strong enough to hold this thing up, you know,
Yeah.
it's perfectly balanced on this like single crystal of
Right. And then
ice.
somebody could kind of prop it.
And somebody like they dig around it down to the bedrock or whatever, and then stand up some 4 pillars.
Yeah.
And it slowly sets itself down on those pillars as
Right.
the ice is melting.
That's possible.
But that can
There are problems with it. Like, for one, if the ice is still there under the rock, it's probably far too dangerous to be even in that area.
That's what I'm
'Cause
thinking,
there's
right?
There's going to be ice all around it, and it's people wouldn't even be there. Like, it would be water, right?
Right, you wouldn't have-
If you're at the end of the glacier, water is pouring out of it if it's melting. Like, There's this enormous
It just
torrent.
does make sense. Like,
Yeah. Like you can look at where the tongues of the Laurentide and the other one, which I can't remember what it's called, the one on the west, right? The two tongues of it stuck down the farthest south. You can see where the meltwater was coming off that shit. And no one lived there.
can we live there? Absolutely.
That's
in
right.
spacesuits.
In spacesuits. Underground.
Yeah.
Way underground. Yeah. So I don't know. Like there's in Iran. Is it in Iran or maybe it's in Syria?
We don't have the official show observer today, so we're kind of like fumbling around with some names and
right.
numbers and
It's somewhere in the Sahara.
arithmetic. Whatever.
5 + 4 is 12. Right.
Yeah.
Sure. I've shown you that picture that I found of it's in Syria. It's in the desert out there where there's one of those. It's this enormous, gigantic rock, and it's sitting balanced on these tiny little things. But somebody cut it in half and then cut it in half again.
Yeah.
Right. And it's cut in half. And the second, so the first cut makes it have this beautiful flat face. And then it's balanced on these two little tiny things that are sticking up out of these little stone things that are sticking up out. And then somebody cut it again down the middle, perpendicular to the first cut, facing directly east. So on the fucking equinox, the sun rises up in that.
Yeah, in that groove.
Yeah.
Or in the cut.
And it looks like it's.
But it completely separates. The two pieces are completely not touching. So each one's balanced on one thing.
Right. After they cut it once, then they cut it again and it stayed balanced. Because you imagine as you cut it, it looks like the width of the blade, right?
Right.
You cut it, it should go.
Right. It should fall together.
But no, like they've managed to cut it perfectly and it stayed like that. So now each one is balanced on a single little
they
bitty
had to know that. Like they
fucking.
They had to be able to calculate where to put those little things so that they would exactly hold up
Right.
the weight of that stone. It would be balanced when they took the blade width of the cut out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like-
and later somebody came along and drew horses on it in graffiti or whatever. But
Yeah, and
like
so
way later, way later, like you could see this like very crude petroglyphs on there.
Yeah.
Right.
So of course,
But whoever made those petroglyphs definitely did not cut that rock.
yeah, but of course, modern archaeologists are like, so these are the people who did this.
Yeah.
Because they painted on
They
it.
said, well, they cut it in half over a very long period of time using a rope and sand. And everyone's like, it's in the desert where they get the rope. Well, they weave it out of grass. What grass? It's the desert. Like there's no grass for thousands of miles. Like where, or hundreds probably. I don't know. Well, it used to be savanna. Okay. So this rock was standing up in the savanna and these savanna herdsmen were like, you know what? Let's cut this in half. We need sand after we make rope out of this grass. Well, we need to wait like 1,000 years for the sand to show up after we make the rope from the grass. Because right now it's savanna, we don't have sand. So we'll make the rope and then we'll just like leave it here. And then in 1,000 years when the desert shows up, they'll have sand and the rope. Right? And then those guys were like, let's cut it in half again. No, that's a dumb story. All right. All right. So with that impossibility, we're going to take another break. We're going to cut this show in half right now.
With a rope made of snakes.
And welcome back, mystery lovers, pill seekers, and conspiratorialists all across the fruited plain, having more puns than any human being should be allowed to have. Brothers of the Serpent podcast, second half of the 52nd show. It's amazing. And we were talking about cutting things in half with ropes and sand
And snakes.
and dolmens. So I got another
Cut 52 in half. And you get 26.
Oh yeah.
Never mind.
I'm done.
But that's half of a deck of cards. That's half of the number of weeks in a year.
That's right. It's really important.
Yeah.
So, back on the dolmens.
6 plus 2, 7.
It's disposition particularities. This is what this guy called. I'm pretty sure English is not his first language, right? Anyway, it doesn't matter. 1, dolmens are placed at different levels relative to the ground. They may be open, lowered into the ground, deeply lowered, or buried in mounds, which is what the English usually call long barrows. 2, a dolmen may be placed on a stone embankment, on a slab bedding or a floor, on separate stones, heel stones, on the ground, or maybe dug into the ground. 3, dolmens are often placed in rows on a common embankment, so like a long river. 4, they are placed on a leveled ground, which is especially noticeable on the slope. So like even if the slope is real steep, the dolmen is like level. You know, they dig it into it or whatever. Dolmens are usually located on elevations, 250 to 400 meters above sea level, less frequently 400 to 800 meters, but sometimes even higher than that, above 800 meters above sea level in some cases. 6, they are wide.
But none below the lowest level there?
Right, none below 250.
So I wonder if that's where the sea level was at the time.
Yeah, flood.
Yeah, I mean, like they couldn't go lower because
Right.
there was ocean.
Dolmens
everywhere.
may be placed in groups or be solitary. They are widespread in hardly accessible mountainous and wooded areas. A lot like that part kind of reminded me of the
Smith Farm.
the root cellars.
Oh, yeah.
They are usually placed with the aperture bearing front slab oriented towards the river or down the slope with the prevailing southeast or south azimuth. So they always are facing water, and a lot of times it's facing south or southeast. Design particularities. 1, dolmens represent stone boxes of diverse configurations, beginning with rectangular and up to round ones with large overhead slabs. It is a very durable structure. Grooves were often carved into stones in order to ensure solid fastening of stone slabs between one another. So they would like groove them so that they socketed into each other, which is why a lot of them are still standing. There's an aperture closable with a plug. At that, there are dolmens with no apertures at all. Which means they're like this perfectly carved interior space with no way to get into it at all.
How do they know that there's an interior space?
Because of sounding, I guess, seismic sounding. On the 4 sides before the front transverse slab, there are portals or stone juts. Okay, the front transverse slab often has a bulge in the middle. It's like a cylindrical lens or sometimes a swelling. So like it looks like it's like a lens shape. Either imagine having a cylinder set into it so that it kind of is rounded like this, or that it's actually a perfect lens. Convex on both sides. Dolmens are notable for symmetry and dimension multiples. There are several dolmen dimension types, i.e. there is dimension range. So no matter how big or small they were, the dimensions are scalable to specific ratios. Okay. Inner surfaces of the slabs are usually flattened or polished. Sometimes there are zigzag or spiral scratched lines on the dolmen walls, and like that indicates to me that they're just scratched, but the surfaces are like beautifully polished. So like some of those Egyptian things you saw, where like there's these scratched hieroglyphs on them on this gorgeously polished surface.
Yeah.
Right, like those were much later done by people who had lost the technology.
Yeah.
They didn't have the Shamir. Sometimes there are carved stone hemispheres jutting out of the transverse slab. Local stones were usually used for construction of dolmens: sandstone, small grain, dense with no major inclusions, dense limestone, or tuff, which I don't know what that is. Some dolmens, cromlechs, and menhirs stand on round artificial banks, which make them kindred to underground cupola tombs. Sometimes dolmens have buttresses that support the side slabs. And sometimes they like actually massively reinforce the ground. So like they found that beneath the dolmen, like there's this beautiful, what looks like a pavement underneath it with all these like gorgeous, different colored stones or whatever making a pavement. But underneath all that pavement is a lot more of them all layered down to make the surface extremely durable and stable.
Man, so they dug way down.
They dug way down and put multiple levels of slabs all the way down to make sure that the surface was badass. That it would not at all distort the shape of the dolmen itself. The overhead slab is often too large and heavy. I don't know why he says two. The largest one found weighs 22.5 tons. It obviously served not only as dolmen roof or overhead cover, sometimes its weight exceeds the weight of all the other dolmen parts put together. So this is characteristic of a dolmen. You'll see, you know that signature one I have that's on the Japanese islands. It's 2 stones and it's got this gigantic slab on top of it, and it's kind of tilted, right? Like the slab on top weighs more than 4 times the 2 uprights that are holding it up. You know. And this guy says, it is not logical to build houses or tombs where the roof is heavier than the house or tomb itself. The front transverse slab. Okay, the front slab has the shape of a stone lens and can focus sounds. Let's see. So he's got a quote from somebody here. Front dolmen slabs are pillow-shaped and gradually thicken towards the middle. In some structures, such a bulge is the most protruding on the side directed inside the chamber. Side edges of front slabs are thoroughly polished and sharpened on the top towards the inside. In most dolmens, front slabs have marked mirror symmetry. In other words, they're symmetrical. If you cut them down in half down the middle or across, they would be symmetrical. The pieces would be symmetrical. As a rule, if their sides were divided along a vertical axis, they would match quite accurately, possessing compatibly equal parts. The apertures, or the quote-unquote manhole, in the front slab are also divisible by an axis of symmetry into 2 equal halves. In early dolmens, apertures are located quite low, at the height of not more than the aperture diameter from the lower edge of the front slab, which is interesting. Right, so like you take the diameter of the aperture they're going to make up from the ground, and that's where they put that aperture. Right. In later monuments, apertures were carved higher, but never higher than the slab's very center.
Like no part of the aperture goes above the center, or
right. Like
or
it's always like if the center is there, it starts just below it. The front slab with an aperture and a portal is called the dolmen facade or face. Dolmen facades are always directed towards the area descent or down slope, and usually down towards a water source. Yeah, this guy says dolmen facades are always directed towards the area descent, i.e. to a nearby river. Such orientation is adhered to rather strictly. Attempts of some authors to link such orientation to cardinal directions have proved to be groundless. And this guy says, let me note that the alternative hypothesis of the dolmen purpose pays little attention to the aforesaid fact, although this is fundamental. Why are dolmens always oriented to water bodies? Now, here's the other thing, the plugs. This part really was weird to me. Stone plugs were tightly inserted into the aperture of the front transverse slabs. A deepened edging was sometimes carved around the aperture. Plugs had various shapes and lengths. The size of the plug aperture was quite standard and fell to within the range of 0.3 to 0.45 meters. I don't know what that is in imperial. The plug length could sometimes reach 1 meter, so it was like a meter long for a plug. Okay, which significantly exceeded the slab width that it was being plugged into.
Yeah.
Long plugs of 0.1 or 0.7 meters are the most intriguing. Or I'm sorry, long plugs of 0.1 to 1 meter. No, geez. Okay, let me try this one more time. Long plugs of 0.7 meters to 1 meter are the most intriguing. Why did the ancients make plugs of such length? Moreover, why did they sometimes carve a stone hemisphere instead of a plug? They made the plug into like a half circle or a half sphere and just stuck it in there. Some researchers associate plugs with the cult of phallic stones. However, this may apply to round plugs only, while plugs had diverse shapes, including square, trapezoid, semicircular, etc. It's very problematic to lift such a plug. They were very difficult, and then to insert them was like, even the long ones is very difficult. Rear transverse slab. In the rear slab, the dolmens is flat. There's no pillow shape. The side directed inside the chamber is flattened and polished. The slab top and bottom are inserted into grooves of the overhead slab and the heel stone, which is the floor. The side slabs are most often close to rectangular, although there are trapezoid ones too. There are also slabs with a raised front part which forms a portal. So like he shows how they have this raised front part of the side slabs. There's a heel stone, a floor. Okay, side slabs may be untreated on the outside and have a salient shape. What was the purpose of such a special stone portal in front of the dolmen facade? Look at that cut into the flooring to hold the side slab.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, there's remnants. Like, look at that cut. Just freaking perfect.
Yep.
So, I think I'll stop reading from this. That's gets the gist of what I wanted to point out, that these are not just haphazard. So, last time...
they're engineered.
Yes.
There's some purpose.
And there's 90,000 known ones. That's holy shit.
It's like it's almost like, what do we have that would be similar to that?
Vehicles.
Like radio towers.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Radio towers. That's a way better example.
Like the microwave antennas are always at a specific height.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other radio transmitters are at different heights because they're, it's like the broadband signals.
I
are
see
at
what you
different
mean.
Heights. It's like there's all these, factors that they have all these very specific things about them that make them seem like it was a whole, like not all cell towers or radio towers look the same. They're
Right.
built in different, but generally if you went around and
You can
said,
find common principles.
yeah, you're like, okay, they either have like, 3 guide wires or 4,
Yeah.
sometimes 5.
They're socketed into the ground.
Yeah.
The ground was prepared and there was a slab.
Yeah.
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 Oh,
And then
yeah.
there's like, there's this one particular round drum that's
Thing.
always at this height.
Yeah. That's a
And
good point.
if it's higher up on an elevation, then that drum is lower on the tower.
That's a good point.
It's like they seem to be engineered for some purpose like that, like
Okay, so that's a good point. So, like, the idea that they were houses or tombs, first of all, houses, no.
right.
Tombs, a little more understandable in terms of somebody coming up with the theory because they did find corpses in them. And then there are the names
The
that mean,
ones-
like, the houses of the bones.
Yeah, the ones that you can't get in or out of, you can live in those until you die. Absolutely.
Yeah. Can we live in dolmens that we can't get in and out of? Absolutely. Until you die. Because you can't get out.
Sorry. Okay,
Did
go
they
ahead.
find bodies in ones that people can't get in and out of? No, they didn't.
Yeah.
Now that would be really strange. Like, and that would imply that they had built it around the body, right?
Right.
Never. Not known anyway, I would say. There are, like I said, 90,000 of these. I'm sure most of them have not been very closely scrutinized by people with lots of expensive instruments,
Yeah.
right? But this guy has written, like, this is the first article, and he just goes through the basics. The second article, I will confess, I didn't understand it. I started reading it. I was like, this is going to be great. He's going in more depth. I fucking could not understand what he was saying. I understood what he was trying to get at, which is basically that these things have properties that are acoustical in some way, right? But the way I like, dude, like this guy knows what he's talking about. I have no idea. Maybe part of it was
Was it like the lexicon? He's like using a bunch of, because like those. I don't
he just lost
use
me.
those words that he was describing to give you which rock he's talking about.
yeah, the transverse slab.
Yeah. I'm just
yeah.
like,
Yeah, that's right. Like some of it did seem Google Translate-ish, right? Like Google Translate was picking the words. I think he's a Russian guy. I'm not sure. I don't quote me on that, or do. It doesn't matter. I'm wrong all the time. Quote me if you want. But like
at your own risk.
basically what it was is he was trying to talk science, and yes, there was like I just couldn't get it. Like I need to go try to read it again. I couldn't get it. Like I went back and I was like, okay. I got the idea that he was saying that these things are acoustical, but the way he was explaining how they did this stuff, I don't know. Anyway, I can't even explain to you why I didn't understand it because I don't know what he's talking about. So I don't know why I don't understand it.
You really didn't understand that.
Right.
Shit. Yeah.
I can't even.
I got
yes. Yeah, I can't even. Yeah, there's no way. So anyway.
Why didn't you understand it? Because.
Because it was hard. I don't know. But he says these interesting things like they're acoustical objects. And when you look at them, you start to see how that makes sense. Like I started thinking of speaker boxes, like they have these ports. They have a very specific interior enclosure.
Yeah.
And then there's a single port, right? That's a round hole that allows the sound to come out. And it makes it, like we call this like a bandpass kind of a box or whatever, right? So then there's the fact that the area around, generally just right around the dolmens and the dolmens themselves have a much lower like overall radiation level than everything else, than just the standard background radiation of the area. Now, if they were using, like what you were just saying about radio towers, dude, if they were using some kind of subtle energies of the earth to communicate across long distances using these things,
Yeah.
that would explain why they've been draining the radiation of the local area to use it, or whatever.
Oh, that's cool. Like they're transducing the radiation energy.
Right, or
into
whatever causes
some-
it. Yeah, exactly. But then there was also the thing that I pointed out that like maybe they chose spots that were for whatever reason lower in radiation. But
So
that seems
I
less
was in
likely.
this lab today at a winery, and I was like, "Yeah, show me the lab." You know what I'm saying? This wine tastes great.
I'll be in there with a pen
Show me
and a
the. So I went in there and like I was really hoping for like lab coats and the whole deal, but it was more like a kitchen that they had some lab equipment in. Anyway,
Remember, Joe Rogan said, "Hey, we could throw on some fake lab coats right now and say some bullshit on YouTube, and people would believe it." So
yeah. Okay, so they have this stirrer.
okay,
For stirring
stir
the wine.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Right. So you take this glass beaker and you set it down on this plate and you push a button on the plate and the wine inside the glass beaker stirs. It's a magna stirrer.
Holy shit! Wow.
Yeah.
What's it grabbing in the wine?
It's using magnetic field to spin the water. So, okay, dowsers will find waterways underground by dowsing because supposedly, possibly the magnetic field. You can,
But it's not accepted by science, and yet science has a
But-
lab thing that stirs water without with using magnetic fields.
that's right, stirs the water.
Okay.
I don't. Maybe I didn't see that the plate was actually spinning, but it's
No.
just like a solid top on this thing. Maybe there was a little round plate that was spinning the beaker. No, because she said it wasn't even in the center.
Right.
And the wine inside just went whoosh and
Holy
stirred.
shit,
And I was like,
that's badass.
That thing's badass. I need that. Magna stir.
So you weren't like me with the sphere of ice. No.
no,
Do
because
that
I was
again.
I'm thinking about the the water meter that we have is magnetic.
Oh yeah.
There's no turbine or paddles in there. The water goes by and magnets are like, oh, that's how much water is going by.
I'm not. Yeah. What I'm questioning is why doesn't science accept dowsing then?
I don't know.
Okay.
But let's get back to this.
Yeah, sorry,
All right.
sorry.
So like, yeah, fuck science and dowsing. What I was getting at is that like all these dolmens are pointed towards waterways, and they're like I was imagining they're using some, like he calls them acoustical things, but to me, I think more and more in terms of just resonance in general. It doesn't matter what because some people would say acoustic frequencies. Where's the range of acoustical frequencies?
yeah.
Where does it end?
Yeah. Where does sound become light?
Or where does sound end? People think because human hearing ends at 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz, is that where acoustics ends? No. Because things are
Acoustics are
acoustically-
anything with waves, right?
It's mechanical energy. It's motion in it's mechanical vibration.
Yeah.
Can be acoustic. So if you had like a diamond or a quartz crystal, it's resonating acoustically, but you can't hear it.
Right.
Its frequency is too high.
So this is why I wanted you to hear this shit because
So I'm just thinking of resonance in general, right? So you have this thing, and yes, it would probably be acoustical, just like
and that's probably what he means. The translation is
just
that,
like the
right?
drum on the radio tower isn't a. If you went up there and hit it with a drumstick, it would be like bow 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 bow.
Yeah.
But it's actually designed to collect a different frequency range of shit.
Right.
So anyway, I'm imagining this dolmen, and they're always pointed towards a waterway.
That's moving. Yeah. Like
So they can like they could transduce something into a signal and then point it at a waterway or above a waterway, just like the dowsing rods are like hundreds of feet above a waterway, and they still point in the direction that the waterway's going.
yeah.
Or show you when you're passing it.
Right.
Due to the fluctuations in the field. So it's like shooting this, they're always level, pointing straight, but they point towards the waterway, and the energy goes over the waterway and then gets channeled into the waterway. So then, like any other one that's over there pointing at a waterway,
Can pick it up because he's
they
got
could-
his beam pointed out.
Yeah, exactly.
Holy
They
shit.
can pick it up, right? Like that's what I was thinking. Like, hell yeah, something devices. I'm going to Dolmens school so I can build the thing to transmit something.
I'm going to Dolmens school so I could build a thing. Man, that's great. See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I look at these things and I'm like, what is happening here?
Is there a blender in there?
Yeah. If water would have hit that hole, it would have turned it into a blender. That's why people can't live in that thing. But that's great, dude. That's badass. And like Brett's idea that he had about it, them being possibly warning signals.
That was another thing I thought of. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's what I was going to say. They're like possibly warning signals that they were transducing. That they were transducing like radiation, like this, because he had the idea that the area is lower in radiation gave him the idea that they were transducing radiation coming from the sky that would irradiate the ground. If there was a giant solar flare, this massive radiation coming down from the sky would make them go, woo, you know, it would turn into sound, and thus they would, like you were saying, it would convert the energy of the radiation in the area into audio that people could hear, or even if it's infrasound that you could just feel. It just makes you terrified. You're like, fucking run, right? You know about infrasound and the effect that it has on people, right? Have I talked to you about this?
No.
But this has been
Does
proven
it make
by
people poop their pants? This is like the sound gun that the cops use, you know?
Technically, but it makes you shit your pants because you're terrified.
Okay.
Like, okay, Jurassic Park used infrasound during the movie. Like, you went into the theaters and they were pumping out this like low frequency shit that you can't hear. Elephants can make this noise. Whales can make these noises. There's a theory that the reason why it makes it like you can't hear it, you can't even feel it, but there's this physical reaction that your body has because something in your body senses it,
yeah.
and it dumps all this adrenaline into you, and it makes you jittery and you're scared. Okay. It's been shown that a lot of places that people think are haunted are actually like having infrasound going through them. So you get in there and you're just like, holy fuck, right? It makes you scared. Like you feel terrified. And there's
that's part of the collective amnesia from like some cataclysm where the whole planet was just like.
Exactly. Right. So the standard explanation is that like megafauna probably could make infrasound, and we were designed to be terrified of giant animals that were predators.
And that would be great because when they started getting close, we would run before we ever saw or heard them.
Exactly. Which makes it really hard to explain why we killed them all.
Just saying.
Yeah, thanks. But anyway, so this is a known thing. So like, you know, the idea that they were inducting radiation from some kind of massive solar thing, or even the electric universe stuff into sound. But obviously, like running terrified is not the reaction you really want to an emergency. So that's probably not a good explanation. It would need to be audible, you know?
Yeah, so my idea of the warning symbol was like the idea of it being pointed towards bodies of water. Bodies of water are in valleys. Valleys were the deepest areas, so oceans were there at one point.
Yeah.
So I was thinking like and they're all down at these levels where the oceans were, so they're pointed at the ocean. And when a tsunami is like way out there and it's creating this wave front or a shock wave from whatever caused the tsunami, these things are like, whoo.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, get up on top of the mountain.
Right. That's right. A Balawaba is coming, or whatever the fuck they called it.
Oh, run into Balawaba. Whatever they call it. Yeah. Better run up the hill, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, get diagram. But, I mean, they have so many of them along there. Like, what if they stop the tsunami? They're just like, oh, the tsunami's like,
yeah, that'd be pretty
That's
awesome.
bullshit. I mean, I know it's bullshit, but still. So there's so many of them, and they were difficult to engineer. I mean, 22 tons for a top slab, that's a big deal. Right.
Yeah.
So we're talking Göbekli Tepe level engineering skills. And even the burying, a lot of them were buried. Like that's why the English called them long barrows in some cases, because they were covered in a mound, you know, to where like a long time ago, what you would see is like a hill with two what looked like a door. Like you'd see this stone sticking off the top, and it would look like a hinge, right? But you take all the dirt away, and it's actually an enormous stone sitting on top of like 4 little ones holding it up.
Yeah, but those different ones don't have like the 4 walls and the hole and all that kind of stuff.
Right, but they could have been emulating that with dirt. I don't know. I'm just saying, like a lot of the he talks about Newgrange some, and like Newgrange is like a long, what they call a long barrow tomb or whatever, and it's got this long tunnel that faces the equinox and all that kind of shit. And there's a first chamber, and then there's a second chamber, and it seems like it has resonant qualities.
Yeah,
like I don't know.
What is that place where there's like just in the side of the stone, there's just this angled tunnel that just goes way freaking down there, and like on the equinox or whatever, the sun just shines like all the way to the back of it.
That's Nerut Dagi.
Okay.
What I was talking about at the very beginning of the show, which has all the weird statues that have been decapitated by the.
Okay.
Right? So like when you go up there, it kind of looks like a chess set. They're all sitting in thrones.
Yeah.
But their heads are all gone.
Where
you
is
realize that there's lions on the outside.
It's in Egypt. Where
it's
is
in
this?
Turkey.
In Turkey.
And the very top of it's the mountaintop has been flattened. Right?
Yeah.
It's been flattened and the thrones are there, but behind the thrones there's this peak of the mountain that's what they call it, the peak of the mountain. But when you look at it really closely, it's actually gravel. It's gravel. It's a gigantic gravel mound like you see at a quarry.
Yeah.
Where they've been pouring it from the top and it's just like stacked way up. And they're like, well, somewhere around here there's a temple. And I'm like, it's under the gravel. Like, come on, guys. But like if you're trying to hide I've thought that this is a place where there's there's a place where they hid and marked ancient knowledge, right? It's way up at the top of the mountain. It's marked with the statues, which are incredibly old, right? And then they buried it under this gravel thing
They flattened the mountain and put the gravel up there.
And then that makes it difficult to get to. And you may not even realize it's there. Like, think about it. Like, you start digging into a gravel mound.
Yeah.
You're never going to be able to make a tunnel into it.
Right.
It's going to keep coming down.
You have to take out
You have to shovel
the whole
all
mound.
the gravel. That's right.
Yeah. So I was just thinking it like, the most advanced butt flap idea.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're going to dig a tunnel that's like hundreds of feet long that the equinox sun will shine down into, you can only dig on that tunnel once a year for like a few minutes.
So actually, they would still need to be digging on it for the next 100 years to get it where it's at right now.
That's right. Today. It'd still be down there waiting.
Right. Okay, there it is. Ding, 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 shit.
And then one year, it's cloudy. And they're just like, damn it.
Damn it.
Can't dig today.
Shit. That's right.
Come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's another one I think probably is a place where they sealed it with the Shamir, the thing that turns rock into clay, because it just goes way down in there and then just ends, like, for no reason. Like, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, maybe they got that mountain of gravel out of there. No, there's not.
There's not enough.
No, it's not enough. Yeah.
But the massive complex of chambers beyond the end of that tunnel, maybe.
Right. Right.
Or the top of the mountain that they cut off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing, is like, I've tried to find these questions out. Like, is the gravel the same stone as the mountain? Are the statues the same stone as the mountain? Who cut their heads off? Why are their noses gone? Like shit like that. I probably know some of the answers to those questions, but like, it's interesting that you brought that up, like that long tunnel. Like, that's exactly what I was thinking of. It's very similar to the tunnel at the end of at the subterranean chamber in the pyramid that just ends, And then there's this one that just ends.
Seriously, like, I know we're up on time here, but
Well, it's 2:33.
Just try to carve a straight tunnel into rock.
Yeah.
Like, what do? Look back every now and again?
We tried this, actually, when we were making our orchard. You can't line something up without at least 2 people and 2 points of reference.
Yeah.
You have to have a guy standing there with the thing, and then you have to have somebody else standing off to get the perspective. Because if you try to do it yourself, it goes way off. It veers way off.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you're digging a tunnel out of like you're digging stone.
Look back to make sure that
Yeah,
it's
and
directly
or there's one guy that's standing over there and he's like, no, hit a little more to the left with this pick with that the other stone you're hitting that stone with, because you're starting to veer to the right after 50 hours and you've made it 1 foot.
I need a new copper chisel.
But that's how they kept it in a straight line, because it took them so long.
Right.
No, that's what I'm saying. You can't even correct.
That's right.
You start going off in one direction, you're like, I need to go left a little more.
I mean, how would we even do that with modern stuff? Like, you're cutting a tunnel, unless you're using machines. If you're doing it by hand or even with a hand tool, you can't survey through rock. Like, you can't.
Right.
You can't
keep yourself.
You can't snap your freaking straight line.
Yeah. Even if that's steel tools, all that stuff. If you're hitting rock with a pickaxe or you're drilling, it's like you're holding a drill, and if you got a foot-long drill bit on there, you don't know if you're actually drilling it in there straight, especially if you're angled specifically to the equinox sunrise. I mean, just
what was guiding the tool? Right?
Yep. Unexpected Christopher Dunn. All right.
Is that the end of the show?
It obviously can be done. No, we have another segment.
Oh, good.
Yeah, relax.
Yes.
Relax.
Snakes.
I know what they were. They were blowholes.
Like if you stood off to the side of them and you blew really hard, it would go whoo, like a
Cool guys don't look at blowholes. So we're not going to talk about dolmens anymore.
shit.
Inside joke. Anyway,
Puns.
welcome back. Final segment of the final hour of the final episode of Snake. The final episode 52.
That's right.
Because there never will be another episode 52 of Snake Bros.
You remember Pabst beer? You ever drink Pabst beer?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Pabst Blue Ribbon. Yeah.
You like it?
I mean, I liked it before it was cool.
I didn't like it. And all I got to say is, those who forget the Pabst are doomed to repeat it.
Wait. I don't get
Wait.
it. I was thinking about something totally different. Is that a nerd joke that I just didn't get?
It's a bad pun. Those who forget the past are doomed. Those who forget the Pabst are doomed to repeat it. It's terrible. I'm sorry.
I think I might have landed on another hipster joke.
All right.
Like, you know why the hipster didn't like beer?
No, why?
Because he drank it before it was cool.
Come on, man. No one else is doing it. Hipster peer pressure.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And
Dang it. I wish I'd have had that one.
Well, your one with the beer reminded me of the pizza. Like the
Yeah, well, that's what I got it from.
okay,
is
all
the
right,
pizza
yeah,
joke. He
yeah.
burned his mouth.
Yeah, why did the hipster burn his mouth? Because he ate his pizza before it was cool.
Yeah.
Ow.
That's also why he didn't like beer.
That's right. Because he drank it before it was cool. I'm just saying, those who forget the Pabst
Yeah.
are doomed to repeat it.
That's great.
So, okay, let's talk about real quick. We have this upcoming field trip. Yeah. I want to kind of preface this a little bit because this is going to be great. Like, it'll really suck if we don't actually do it. So maybe we shouldn't, but I think we're going to.
Yeah, so we're planning a trip to a place in unknown parts of Texas on the Devil's River. There's a ranch out there on like 9.5 miles of the Devil's River.
Wow.
And we got a group of guys going out there. There's some caves that have been found to have like Indian mounds or I don't know what you would call them. They're in caves, basically.
Yeah.
There's what I've been told is
stratigraphied artifacts, basically.
yeah,
right?
in like
It's called
burn midden and stuff, and there's like the ceilings that are all blackened and stuff with soot.
I think it's called occupation layers or something like that.
yeah. And one of them they've dug down like 9 feet and it's still going.
Wow.
But they're finding all kinds of badass stuff there. Like one of their whole arrows with the arrowheads still like tied on.
Wow.
With the sinew still intact. They found sandals, bone awls, which are, I think, I haven't really looked this up, but they're like almost like a needle.
Yeah.
But one of them they found is like a foot long almost.
Wow.
They found what appears to be like a mattress. It's all this woven material in a big like bed type. Just this big shape for sleeping in. It's all woven together. And,
Oh, wow.
I mean, of course, it's, pretty tattered and stuff, but it's buried under this really fine, sooty silt, like powdery stuff with rock and, mixed in rubble. They're finding pottery. They're finding woven basket pieces and obviously, arrowheads and spearheads and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
But just like a lot of badass, like well-preserved things in these caves. And then around the rest of the property, there's a whole bunch of regular mounds, like, that are out in the elements. But there's so much out there that has not been explored.
Yeah.
Like there's bound to be many more caves because there's multiple caves that they have found.
Yeah.
And every one of them has,
Wow.
there's petroglyphs, there's, artifacts.
How
and
old are they? I mean,
I haven't found that out yet.
they're 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
No one knows.
Yeah. But I mean, there's like I was told they've dug down 9 feet in one of them.
Wow.
And it's still going.
Yeah,
So I mean, like
that's a lot of.
we don't know how old it gets because you got to get to the bottom, right? To see
Right.
what's the oldest. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, but there's multiple caves and that they've discovered that have, the stuff in, I don't know what you call it, midden, I guess is what they're calling it. But you have to wear a respirator, the badass kind with the filters and shit.
Is that because of guano?
Because of the dust.
Oh, okay.
Once you start digging, it just raises the dust and it gets thick in the room and you can't be breathing that shit. It's real fine. Yeah. That's right. Fine particles of smoke. But yeah, super excited. We're going Friday after work, and then staying Friday night, Saturday night, and possibly Sunday night to come back on Monday. But we're basically...
Or we're going to stay Friday night, Saturday night, get lost and die, and never come back.
Yeah. That's, so the rules are we can pretty much dig the whole time. Like we can, all day, all night, whatever we want to do.
Yeah. Bring lots of coffee.
Yeah. But probably, I mean, digging at night, yes, you're in a cave. I mean, what the hell?
Yeah.
It's
dark
cooler.
either way.
It's cooler.
It's dark.
I'm not sure they're deep caves. I have seen some pictures and it looks like there's light in there. So it's like these
Overhangs.
just caverns, like open to maybe a cliff wall overhang.
Yeah.
I was told that one of them has a real high ceiling. But
Man.
yeah, so
Are there like archaeologists there, or is it just
No.
So there's no one I can piss off.
no.
I can't be like.
We have one guide.
Okay.
And he's pretty much like
Open
running
to
the.
whatever.
I don't know if he owns it or if he has if he's leased it for this purpose. But it's a money-making venture for those people. So archaeologists
got
be
you.
damned. I
Right.
mean, yeah.
I meant, is there archaeologists there because I'm going to piss them off by talking about
No,
what I think.
but
this
I mean,
is.
like on the one hand, it's like there is, this is the difficulty in this type of thing to me. Is it like if I don't go, if we don't go,
somebody else going to
other people are going to go. They're going to pay to go.
Yeah.
And they're going to destroy it. So
I
it's
wasn't
like,
even talking about that, but yeah, I
I
understand.
know
what you're
I'm
saying.
bringing that up as a thing
because like people are like, well, you're destroying this precious archaeological site.
yeah, exactly. And there's I understand that, but
Yeah.
if you know that they're about to make a soccer field
Yeah.
over
I remember that.
like 5 or 6 freaking like a whole complex of mounds and stuff that are known to be there where people have been finding
Yeah.
like museum grade artifacts all over, and they're just going to take these massive machines and then cut the whole thing flat and then put sod over top of it.
Yeah.
You know, people are going out there, and this is a totally different place that I'm talking about now than where we're going. It's just an example.
But we experienced this too, yeah.
But people are going out there and just like pulling up all this stuff because it's about to be covered and it's being run over by massive machines and dozers and stuff every day.
Yeah.
So the archaeologists, on the other hand, are flipping out because it's like people are destroying precious and it's like, well, you know, dig it up then.
Yeah.
But they're like, well, we don't have the resources, and you know, I get that. Well,
Yeah. People do.
if you have a piece of property and it has this stuff on it and you need to make some money, and they have this thing called pay dig, and people can pay to go dig, and it's about finding badass shit.
Yeah.
And they're not archaeologists, so they're not doing it by the book, you know, so it's not going to take 10 years. They're
Right.
going to do it fast, and they're going to destroy stuff, but they will find stuff.
Right.
So if I had my way, I would buy the whole piece of property and then have it dug by professionals, right? Like
Right.
if I had all the money right now, like get a team of professionals out there, dig down, find everything, keep it intact.
Right.
Like that would be awesome, but that's not the case.
Right. So
Can't do it.
you work with what you've got.
Yeah, so I want to go and dig, and yeah, we got a group of people who are respect you know,
We got a bunch of snake bros.
we got a bunch of snake bros that
Yeah.
love this stuff, and we're all going to go out there and freaking
Disprove the standard model.
dig as much as we can to find the most badass shit we can.
That's right.
It's going to be so freaking awesome. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Don't ask me where it is or who or how or whatever. Just
Yeah.
fuck off.
Yeah. It's none of your business.
But no, we are doing this field trip, and it is going to cost some money, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
It's totally worth it. So
Yeah, it's going to be totally worth it. I can't wait. Speaking of costing money, like, so
it's supposedly 2 hours down some dirt road. Like,
wow.
yeah, it's like way off the grid. Like it's
Yeah.
way out there.
Wow.
You turn off the road onto a dirt road, and then you're driving.
And then 2
for
hours
2
later.
hours.
You die.
I was just like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Can it be 3?
Come on. How about 3?
Get me far away.
How about now? Yeah. So, okay. I was thinking about this, like, doing this podcast costs money, period. Like, we pay for the hosting. We pay for the name. Like, we need a new air conditioner in the Tangent Cube.
Yeah.
Right. We're doing these field trips. We've already taken a couple. Obviously, those cost money. You've got gas, you've got food, all that kind of stuff. And I've had a couple of people ask me, like, hey, you know, how do we, like, what's the deal, bro? How do we contribute? So I'm thinking about, what I'm doing is asking you guys as listeners, what do you think about this? Like, I want to know what the opinions are. Like, do you guys think that it would be presumptuous of us to put a PayPal link on the website, the blog, where people could contribute if they want to? Like, we're not going to have any premium content where you only get it if you pay, nothing like that. Just, it'll be a pay if you feel like it, and you could pay whatever amount. It doesn't matter if it's 50 cents or if it's thousands of dollars, which is really unlikely. But this is what I want to know. Do you guys think that would be presumptuous of us to put that up there and then mention it at the end of each show? Like, hey, if you guys want to donate. Because I haven't done it yet. But we've been thinking about it because it would be great if we could get a little help. But if not, we're going to still do the podcast. So the point is that's I just want to know what you guys think. Are there any of you besides the people who have contacted me about this, like, willing to contribute? You know, do you think it's worth it? Do you think it would turn you off if we were asking for contributions? That's what I want to know. So, what do you think?
I mean,
He ain't gonna pay anything. We're already paying, but yeah. So that was just kind of an aside. like that reminded me because we're gonna be going on this other field trip. So I thought I'd just throw
think
that out there.
like people do these like crowdfunding campaigns, and that's pretty much like, hey, donate to this cause.
Right.
So we're not really doing it crowdfunding. It's just like, if you want to donate because you like it, I don't see a problem with that. Like,
Yeah.
People get offended by that, then don't donate.
Yeah. And if you donate, the show is much more likely to continue to go. Like, I think that we are doing this because we love it, but obviously, like things can't go on forever. But if people have donated, that will make it much more likely to go on for a lot longer. So,
are you threatening our listeners with quitting?
that's a statement, not a fact. I'll just say that.
That's a promise. It's not a threat.
I like statement, not a fact.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, I love doing this. Totally plan to keep doing it. But
I guess what I should say is the possibilities of what we could do with the show would increase greatly.
Yeah.
If there were donations helping us out, because we could be like, guys, we're going to go like do this. We're going to go look at that. We've gotten the opportunity to go to Egypt with Robert Shock and die,
Yeah, that'd be badass.
stuff like that. Like, I don't think the show will ever stop unless we do get lost and die. But, and it's possible that if you pay for us to go somewhere, we might get lost and die a lot sooner than we would have if you hadn't paid. I'm just saying. But the possibilities for the things we could explore and then coming back and talk to you guys about on the podcast would increase given donations. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So
there's
yeah.
the other possibility that I had thought about originally was sponsors, like
Yeah.
where basically we would be doing commercials, and obviously we would do them like Snake Bros style.
Hell yeah.
But that's again like one of the reasons why I don't listen to radio is because I don't like commercials,
Right.
and I
I
live a commercial-free life.
Right.
Like,
I have heard a couple of podcasts where their commercials are so fucking awesome that I listen to them again and again.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I show people that I'm like, listen to this fucking commercial.
Yeah.
Like, this is badass, right? I think we could do commercials like that.
yeah, I do too. But I'm just saying, that's just one of the things. It's like, you get a badass app, and if you don't pay for it, then you're getting commercials. But then you can pay for it and not get commercials. So
Right.
for me personally, I would rather pay and not have commercials.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Especially when the pay amount is so low. And
So-
when you can choose your own donation.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Donations are like, if there's I'm trying to think of
It's pay if you
the
want.
unexplained. The unexplained, he goes by donations.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
And there's no commercials. He doesn't advertise anything.
That's right.
And that's great. Like Joe Rogan doesn't do donations. He has advertising.
Right.
And I just fast forward through that shit every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm an ass.
Right.
What
But
can I say?
obviously it worked for him because some people listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you have to be interested in the products he's pushing, which are usually like
Yeah.
Hammerhead, right?
Yeah.
You either have to want to kick somebody's ass or you have to want to like pick up a bunch of weights all the time. So like, I'm not interested in either of those things. So I don't
Yeah.
listen to it.
We want to crawl into tunnels.
That's right. And die.
And try to find ancient texts.
So if you're interested in us crawling into tunnels and finding ancient texts, show me the money. Anyway, let's get off that subject.
No, but I'm glad you brought that up. Thanks for enduring that, folks.
Yeah, sorry about that. Probably the most advertising you're going to hear.
Yeah.
on this.
Pyramid money.
That's right. Just think of it as straight to pyramid
It's
money.
basically a scheme to get us to pyramids. So we're going to call it a
A
pyramid,
pyramid scheme. This is a Snake Bros pyramid scheme. Give us money, we'll go to pyramids. It's a great scheme.
Yeah. And it wouldn't really take a lot to get us to pyramids initially because there's some right down there in Mexico.
That's
that
right.
I really want to go check out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, moving on. We
Yeah.
have 7 minutes left on episode 52.
7-4. All right. So again, like we talked about the Dolmens. We talked about this, like, hold on a second. I just had a smoke. Let's go. There you go. So to wrap this up, if you can, like the efforts of the ancients. I mean, just like, 90,000 dolmens, the stuff in Peru, the terracing along the valley of the Inca, the tunnels that go down and end in nothing, the massive, like over 200 hypogeum / pharas in the Anatolia / Cappadocia region of Turkey. Malta that has temples all over it, and then the hypogeums beneath it, and the cart ruts that go down into the bay and across to the other islands and shit. The stuff you saw in Italy, the cathedrals. Okay, and that's not even going to ancients. But then again, we don't know who those people were. Like, where the fuck did they come from, and where the hell, you know? It's like,
were they Viracochas? You know, were they?
Yeah, they're like Cotton Eye Joe.
Were they?
Where did you come from? Where did you go? Right? Whoever built those things. Just
were they also great civilizers?
Yes.
You know, by
and it seems like it.
Beautiful structures they caused, like entire.
Yeah. One thing that Shock said in the interview with Joe Rogan that really interested me was that he was implying, again, this is like him sort of speculating, but he was implying that the impetus to build monumental structures out of stone came from the fact that the sun tried to kill us out of the sky. Yeah. And the best way to protect yourself from that is to either go underground or build gigantic structures out of stone. Because you can go inside, like you could go inside that cathedral and not be irradiated by whatever the sun did.
Yeah.
Right.
As long as the roof is made of stone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
a lot of, like, one of the ceilings in one of the cathedrals was gold.
There you go.
You know, same deal.
Right. Like mica in the pyramids down in Mexico. Right. They just coated it in mica. It's a fantastic insulator.
But it's almost like what really makes more sense than people going in there is the seeds of people going in there and not being irradiated.
You're absolutely right. Right.
Because
like if you're going
in a tiny chamber inside a massive structure like that, you can imagine that you could save billions of humans.
Yeah. So you can look in,
but not.
Is it Sweden? I wish we had the show observer. Somewhere in Europe, I think it's Sweden. It might be. It doesn't matter. They are making a seed bank.
Yeah.
Look at how it's constructed. It's the same deal. Long tunnel going way down into the rock. Rooms down there at the bottom.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep, I know what you're saying. It's just crazy to think, like, yeah, so you have a few people, and then, I mean, what are they going to do with all the quote unquote seeds of man? Like artificial insemination or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So you would need enough people
complex.
Yeah, that's true. Like, we'd have to think about that. Like, what are the... Well, I mean, okay, so in the Zendavesta, it says that every 40 years, a male and a female was born to each couple, but that they were not the seeds of them, but the seeds that were saved.
Yeah, how did they... Yeah, even if they were, how did they decide it was going to be a male and a female?
Right.
I mean, come on.
And how every 40 years, like, were they not boning the whole time? It's like, what are you doing? And yeah, I agree that that makes a lot more sense than people. But like during this is also interesting. I've been meaning to mention this, that up until very recently in England, at least I know, in Europe, the cathedrals were places where people, like all the people went and stayed overnight during what we now call Halloween, All Hallows Eve, which is what the Day of the Dead,
right?
The same day that everyone fucking died. So there's still this tradition, and like they did it because they thought that all the dead walked the surface, right? That the demons were all out and shit. So they went into the churches. This is how they looked at it. They go into the churches to protect themselves from that. But really, they're preserving this ancient tradition of going into the places of stone during the Day of the Dead.
Yeah. Yeah, that's badass. Yeah, I'm also not saying that. I mean, these hypogeums or whatever, hypogei?
Hypogea?
They
hypogei.
They're big enough. They're big enough to hold like a lot of people.
Yeah.
But, things like the pyramid or pyramids in Mexico.
Yeah, they're not. But the hypogea could hold a lot more people if they were seeds. Right?
Yeah.
And like even when you look at the story of Noah's Ark, the 30 cubits, 300 cubits or whatever, you're not going to get all the animals in there. You can't. But if they were seeds, I mean, just think about all the animals you would need to feed all those animals.
Yeah.
And all the plants you would need to feed the other animals that are probably feeding the other animals. Like, it can't be done. And then, like, just Noah's family is going to handle all that shit? No.
Yeah.
But if it was all seeds, no problem.
Right.
And I did find it interesting, like, this is just a brief aside, but the Bible also mentions that, like, 2 by 2, blah, blah, blah. But when it starts talking about birds, it says 7. Bring up 7 pairs for birds. Like, that implies something strange maybe there about like, you need that many to propagate new species, but whereas these other mammals, you can just kind of have pairs or whatever. But with the birds, you need a lot more for some reason. I don't know. Also,
I was just thinking about that. Well, they lay eggs, but
yeah, that's true.
reptiles all lay eggs, so it would be more than just birds.
So you need like 7 pairs of snakes.
That's right. That's what I was thinking. 7 snakes.
No woman is going to get on a boat with 7 pairs of snakes.
But if she was in seed form, she might.
She might. That's right. I wouldn't get on a boat with 7 pairs of snakes. Unless I was one of the pairs.
Unless I was one of the snake bros.
That's right. Snake bros. Oh, that reminded me of something I just
Such
forgot
a
what
great
it was.
mystery. Dang it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just got, like I said before, or last show, I got the Worlds in Collision. And I'm reading kind of the intro, his preface. And it's reminding me how much Velikovsky I read aside from Earth and Upheaval. Like, I always flip out about Earth and Upheaval, but I've read a bunch of his stuff. And, like, he's talking about, and I remember this reminded me that he actually set up conferences on this idea of the collective trauma. Right? I mean, he organized conferences with psychologists and other people to talk about, like, what would this mean? Like, what would this really mean for the entire human race? Or for something to happen that kills almost everybody, the people that are left, what really are they going to be like mentally?
Yeah.
And then how is that going to affect their children? And then their children's children and so on and so forth to result in what we have now, where we don't remember. And yet there are all, and like he points to all of these strange tendencies of people, right? We have these religions that all preach that there's going to be a fucking end of the world, right? And that it's going to be a mad god that does it. And, and there are people, I mean, like humongous cults start, I mean, like, just in the United States, fire and brimstone revivals are about this, like the world is going to end in fire from the fucking sky.
Yeah.
And you probably could tell those people, like, well, you know what, that happened the last, and they're gonna think you're full of shit because no, it was water last time. No, dude, it's fire from the sky.
Yeah,
that's why you're talking about it. There was a lot of water involved, but fire in the sky caused it.
Fire can make water out of ice.
It's a very simple Yeah, it's very simple. You have a lot of ice, fire, you end up with water. That's right. I'm just saying. And like your picture of the scarred god of war, Mars, getting really big. Like after they see this
fight
battle, and then it's like,
and they're like, no,
because it looked like it defeated Venus, and then it's like showing up. They're like, no, and now we have this like iconic image of the warrior with the scar over his eye.
Yeah.
So Velikovsky has had conferences and set up, and people have done this since then too, but like those kinds of what they call archetypes, those archetypal images of the warrior with the scar over his eye are caused by this forgotten cataclysm that damn near killed everybody.
Yeah.
That's the end of the show.
Yeah.
That's the end of the show right there. Because this show was a test to see how listeners would respond to having their minds blown. Right? Thanks, Laura, for that intro. It was badass. All right, so you guys can get a hold of us at brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com, or you can go directly to the blog at brothersoftheserpent.com. Thanks to Kyle Allen and Ty Stone for all the music, and Kyle for the producing. Like, I don't mention this, but Kyle produces this whole show. Like, he puts it all together audio in terms of audio, and it's just top of the fucking line. So,
thank you.
Thank you very much for that, dude. Like, it would not be the same without you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for all the content. I mean, I could not do this by myself. It would just be songs.
It would just be songs.
Yeah.
But you have great songs that include all this ancient text, right?
Yeah. It's because you come down here and talk to me about stuff.
That's right. So thank you guys very much. I am Russ Allen, and this is my brother Kyle Allen. We are the Snake Bros, Brothers of the Serpent, and we are here to remind you that skeletons are taking over the earth. As a matter of fact, there's a skeleton inside of you right now!